Hello and most welcome to 1152 of the series. We are now looking at the koshas, the layers. It's oddly how close they are to quantum fields and how they have the same single attractor each and every one. No, not the same in contrast to each other, but they have one unique one. Those are called the chakras. There are 7 koshas. Seven koshas, as well as 7 chakras. And the above one goes through a whole line, all through the system, and it reminds very much how we showed before with a quantum field, looking like this. I will continue with the art of changing, a new approach to the Alexander technique by Glen Park. And we'll have a conclusion a little bit later. Sorry about that. Should be that one. This is striding on to the psychic level of the chakras. This is page 226, Glen Park's A New Approach to the Alexander Technique, the Art of Changing. Moving towards a freer and more balanced expression of the whole self. And as you might have noticed, this is very close to the Diogo Rapaport's Matrushkas. The one, according to him, has always had connection. So far we have dealt with the chakras. That's the previous lecture, wrongly numbered 1152. This is 1152. Sorry about that. Psychic level of the chakras. So far we dealt with the chakras as they function in our energy system at a mundane level. However, what led me to study these energy centers was that I was experiencing a psychic level of operation as a result of the Alexander work I was doing. It is not uncommon for a student to find changes of this kind occurring with intensive Alexander work. Releasing the interferences to energy flows means that the psychic level of functioning of the chakras become more intense for some people. This may be a very unwanted gift. It is not always desirable to take on another person's thoughts or feelings or physical pain And it is important for those people who find they are psychically open to learn how to close down the psychic level of the chakras. Being psychically open can be just another habit, and a very debilitating one. It is important to distinguish between the two levels of functioning in the chakras, because while we all function at the mundane level, we all have the capacity to develop the psychic level. It is a skill which develops more naturally and easily in some people than in others, rather in the way that some people are more musically gifted than others. In general, people fall into two categories: those who find it difficult to open up psychically, and those who find it difficult to close down psychically. There are few fortunate people who are able to control their psychic mechanism easily without training, so they can operate from choice as to whether it's open or closed. It is a question of one's habitual consciousness. Either one is used to being open or closed psychically. If we can bring our psychic consciousness into awareness, then it becomes relatively easy to control it, as easy as it is to control any bad habit. The natural psychic often experiences his skills as a liability rather than an ability, because he usually does not know how to control the psychic mechanism and experience himself at the mercy of the influences around him. It is because of this, and because I have met many Alexander students who have had difficulties because of their sensitivity, that I wish to explain the psychic level of the chakras, how to be more in control of this level by learning to open and close the chakras. And develop methods of psychic hygiene and protection. My emphasis in this section is not on showing the reader how to develop psychically, as that would require another book, but on helping the reader to understand the psychic mechanism, and in particular to help those readers who find themselves psychically too open for their own good. In addition, the exercises in cleansing and protection are useful and effective for everyone. Often people talk about chakras being open and closed. This can mean very different things. At a mundane level, when a chakra is open, it means the energy is flowing through it in a balanced way, and that there is no interference to the flow, neither underactivity at the mundane level. when the chakra is closed, then it is underactive. However, we have the ability to open and close the psychic level of functioning when we want to. This does not mean that if we close the psychic functioning of the chakra, we are also using its mundane activity. For example, it is possible to be very good at expressing oneself, a good communicator without being incessantly open to psychic voices or telepathy. The mundane and psychic levels of the chakras are interconnected. If a person is blocked in the third chakra in such a way that he experiences the world from a point of view of a victim, that interpretation of his experience will clearly affect his psychic experience. A paranoid person will be a paranoid psychic, and a trusting person will be a trusting psychic. A lot of psychically sensitive people have a tendency to be paranoid, because as children they picked up all sorts of information that was then often denied by adults around them, leaving them with a lack of confidence in their perceptions and a lack of trust in other people. There tends to be a lot of fear and anxiety around psychism. This is partly because it has been so suppressed in our society and ourselves as children. Also, it's worrying because a psychic can have a very powerful influence over others. And those psychics who tend to have a negative view of life can be extremely discouraging in the way they interpret the psychic information they receive. There are two aspects to being psychic. Firstly, the psychic receives the information, and secondly, he interprets it. That interpretation will be affected by the way the chakras are working at the mundane level. For those readers who consult psychics, it is important to bear in mind two things. Firstly, psychics are fallible. The information they get is not always accurate, and sometimes they just get it wrong. Secondly, the way the psychic interprets the information is dependent on the personality of the psychic. You should assess this in the way you assess any other person in your life. Some psychics are obsessed with the negative and will only be able to pick up information that deals with difficulties and problems. Others are desperately anxious to please and will not receive negative information, or may suppress it or interpret it in a way that may cloud the issue. Having said this, a good psychic can be a most helpful counselor, and the skills of psychics are becoming more and more respected and recognized in all walks of life, from crime detection to psychotherapy. The base chakra controls our energy supply from the earth. It does not have a psychic function beyond this. but as a supplier of energy, this chakra is always open and active, as also is the Crown Chakra that supplies our energy system with cosmic energy from the universe. Kundalini energy. The base chakra does have a further function at the spiritual level, which it would seem important to mention here. It stores the Kundalini energy. The Kundalini is an extremely powerful energy resource which can be tapped in times of extreme stress. If you have ever heard of stories along the lines of mother single-handed lifts bus of child, then the mother accessed her Kundalini energy in those few moments. So powerful was her desire and will to save the child. The way in which Kundalini energy is understood in Eastern mysticism is that if we can raise the Kundalini energy through the spine to connect with the Crown Chakra, then we become enlightened. Raising the Kundalini can be a dangerous and difficult process if not wholly understood. People have been known to have very painful and terrifying experiences of this when taking drugs. With the right preparation, it can be most wonderful and truly enlightening. The Kundalini energy has the power to accelerate the evolutionary development of the nervous system. Our nervous system works on the basis of muscle imprinting. As I have mentioned before, we have a frightening experience such as falling off a tree, and this fear response becomes imprinted in the musculature, potentially to the extent that every time we are near a large tree, we feel afraid. This is the way our neuromuscular system works. Just like the rest of the animal kingdom. However, as human beings, we also have consciousness, and this informs us that there is no reason to be afraid of trees. The conflict between the nervous system and consciousness can develop neurosis. Something frightens us, such as a spider, which we know consciously is powerless to hurt us. That instinctual imprinted fear can be released when we bring it into line with consciousness, and much of psychotherapy sets out to do this. The Kundalini energy, as it rises in the body, removes the fear imprinting, so it brings the nervous system into a present time. Every definition of enlightenment involves being in a state without fear, being totally in present time. The rising of Kundalini cleanses the muscle imprinting, and if maintained, develops a fearless state of being. People who meditate deeply find all fear and anger states rising up into their consciousness. Meditation, psychotherapy, and the Alexander technique are all ways of cleansing the nervous system. This is not the same as raising the Kundalini energy, which is a powerful physical experience. but it prepares the ground for that transformation to take place, if appropriate, where the person who experienced the rising unprepared, possibly through the taking of drugs, extreme fasting, and other forcing methods, usually finds the rising of Kundalini an extremely unpleasant and painful experience. As the bright heat and light of the Kundalini lights up the old fears and pain of ancient muscle imprinting. The mystery of death by spontaneous combustion might be a case of Kundalini rising in an unprepared body. This type of death only occurs in all people and very rarely. And I imagine the body simply cannot contain the power of the Kundalini energy. It is well known that as some old and fragile people are about to die, they suddenly access a massive amount of energy. These are all examples of accessing the powerful store of Kundalini energy that we have available to us. The second chakra, Sacral. Clairsentience or clear feeling is the psychic function of this chakra, and it is the most common form of psychism. Everybody experiences it to greater or lesser degree. It is the ability to feel another person's feelings and physical sensations. We probably all have had the experience of being with someone who is extremely happy or extremely depressed or angry, and finding that we have taken on that person's emotion. Someone who is extremely clairsentient may find that this happens in a shop or a pub without her even talking to the person near her, and so often not knowing why she has had a sudden mood swing. In clairsentience, the energy of the other person comes through the aura and interacts with your aura. A psychically developed person can sense the emotional quality of the other person's aura. But this is different from taking it into her own energy system. If the second chakra is open, then you will actually have the feeling, it will seem, as though it is yours. You can also pick up symptoms in this chakra. So you may find you have caught someone else's headache or abdominal pain. It is possible to take on another person's illness in this way, either physical or psychological. A lot of illnesses that run in families, such as cancer, can be as a result of the parents' illness being absorbed through the second chakra by the child. Although of course dietary And life habits also contribute to these familial tendencies. So it's difficult to prove a primary cause. Heredity plays a part, but not as big part as we tend to suppose. We can observe the emotion habits of our parents through this chakra, and this can be for better or for worse. In order to be in control of this chakra, the first thing to do is to develop an awareness of your auric experiences, which is another aspect of refining your self-awareness. The exercises on the aura help with this. The third chakra, solar plexus. This chakra moves the energy around the body, just as it deals with issues of power and control at the mundane level. It controls the energy at the psychic level. It is the psychic pump of the body. This affects how we operate at the mundane level. For example, if you are feeling very sad because you are missing the company of someone you love, and you are unable to move out of that sad state, although you want to, then you are stuck in the second chakra. Experiences lack of pleasure and nourishment. It may be important to experience those feelings, and you may choose to stay with them. On the other hand, you may choose to change your energy state by reading a book which stimulates you mentally, so you are now using the energy of the sixth chakra. Perhaps you may choose to stay with the feelings and work with them in some ways. So as suggested in the chapter on emotions. Then you will still be using some sixth chakra energy to throw some light on your feelings, and perhaps some heart chakra energy is used to accept your feelings. It is the third chakra that moves the energy around the body, from the second chakra to the sixth chakra, or if you decide to write a poem about it, you will be moving into the fifth chakra energy. If you stay sad and miserable when reading or unable to write a poem, wishing to move out of that state but not being able to, then the third chakra has not succeeded in moving the energy to another center. The third chakra can also move energy around outside your body. You may wish to send love energy to another person. Then the third chakra will move the energy of the heart chakra outwards to that other person. The third chakra also draws energy in from the outside and distributes it around the other chakras. The fourth chakra, heart. This is the chakra of love energy. And at a psychic level, the energy is one of total affinity with another. One energetically becomes the other, where there is another person or an object. The heart chakra deals with a holistic experience of life, and so it does not have ego boundaries in the same way as the lower chakras do. A psychic who works from this center for a short time becomes the other person, knows them totally, their thoughts, their feelings, their total psychological makeup and physiology. There is a total identification and affinity, which is more than the symptom collecting in the second chakra. Most psychics find it difficult to operate from this center professionally because they lose their own boundaries and sense of space. They're too open. Couples who have lived together for so long that they begin to look alike are usually operating from the heart center psychically with each other. In time with this center, you literally start becoming the other person because there are no boundaries between you. Healing energy comes from this center and is another form of psychic energy. Many healers would claim that ill health is due to the feeling separate, not a part of the whole, not in touch with the heart chakra energy. The qualities of wholeness, belonging and connection are transmitted from the center. In addition, the healer gives out an energy of love and acceptance, and all this is a powerful healing force which stimulates the heart chakra energy of the recipient. The heart chakra is governed by the thymus gland in the body. Did you hear that? The thymus, the thymus. And this gland is an important part of our immune system. Strengthening the heart chakra energy also strengthens the immune system of the body. The fifth chakra, which is the throat. Communication is the key word for this chakra at whatever level. If you experience telepathy, verbal messages transmitted with or without an inner voice, then this chakra is functioning psychically. When the telephone rings and you know who it is before you answer, this is telepathy, as is a situation when you know what another person is thinking or experience, even though they might be many miles away. If you hear voices that are not of the visible world, or get sounds or verbal information from a non-visible source, such as when a string of words come into your mind seemingly from nowhere, then this is called clairaudience, which means clear hearing. The sixth chakra, eye. Clairvoyance is the skill associated with this chakra. It means clear seeing, and it's seeing with the third eye. And a psychic information that is received visually comes through this center, as does seeing auras and chakras. Those people who can see entities from other realms are using the third eye. Some clairvoyants see with their eyes open, and some do it with their eyes closed. What they see is an image of the third eye, which, if the clairvoyant has her eye open, will then be transposed onto the field of vision of the physical eyes. It is as though two worlds have been placed on top of the other. The clairvoyant information doesn't exist in our physical reality, just as chakras and auras don't exist in our physical reality. They are of another realm. The Crown Chakra is the chakra of knowing, which is neither verbal nor visual. It is the chakra which understands the whole pattern with a deep knowing understanding. It can be said to be direct inspirational knowledge from a divine source, or a clear channel into the cosmic consciousness of the universe. We probably all have experienced times when we know exactly what to do. We've seen beyond the surface appearance to the deep underlying truth. These moments occur when we allow the Crown Chakra to guide us, and that potential is there all the time if we don't interfere with it. Direct control trance mediums works from this center. These are the psychic who leave their physical body and allow another being from an astral plane to enter their body and use it for some time. Books such as the Seth books have been written by a psychic who work in this way. The hand chakras. The hands have several psychic functions. Healing comes through the hands in conjunction with the energy of the chakras. The hands can heal by working on the aura of the person or by contacting the physical body. Inspirational writing, when a person goes into mild trance and the writing takes over, operates through the hands in combination with the throat chakra. Psychometry, getting information by touching an object, uses the hand chakra in combination with the second and possibly the fifth and sixth chakras. Telekinesis, the phenomena of objects moving seemingly by themselves, can use the hand chakras in conjunction with the third chakra. The hands are the means whereby we give out energy, and the energy we give out depends on the quality of energy flowing through the chakras. Alexander teachers work with their hands, and the stimulus they give is related to the energy they organize through inhibition and direction of the body. And it is also related to the energy flow through the chakras. Every teacher gives a different stimulus because we are all very different, and we are giving of ourselves. The feet chakras. The feet no longer have psychic function other than to draw the energy into the body, which is the same as their mundane function. In the Bible, when we hear somebody kissing another's feet, this is an indication of the healing power of the feet, which was used more in earlier times. The back of the neck is a very important part of our psychic mechanism. It is not a chakra as such. It is the other side of the third eye. Whereas the third eye is renowned for seeing into the future, the back of the neck can access information about the past. It can remember our racial history and our personal past. It contacts the instinctual part of the brain and can bring it into consciousness. The neck is also very important in Alexander work. Freeing the neck all allows a freeing to occur throughout the body. There are 7 neck vertebrae, and each one of these corresponds to the one of the 7 chakras. So As we free the neck, we are directly stimulating a free flow of energy through the chakras. During my training, I was fortunate I would have lessons with this teacher regularly, often going to her home to have them. When she worked orally, she was very active, waving her arms, moving her body, almost as though she was dancing around me. One day when we had been discussing how important the thinking part of the work is, and how thought doesn't exist in the space-time in the same way that bodies do, we decided to try an experiment. For 4 or 5 weeks, I had a lesson with this teacher, but we didn't meet. I stayed at home and lay down in semi-supine for 3/4 of an hour and noticed any sensations, feelings and changes in my body. Later, when we met, we would discuss what she felt she had been working on and what I had noticed changing in my body. Our feedback always seemed to correlate. If I had noticed big changes in my legs, that would have been the area she was working on. Or if it seemed to be my throat area, then she too would have been thinking about and dancing around that. I was finally convinced about this when, on one occasion, I lay down for my lesson in absentia and suddenly got this strong urge to get up and dance. I just didn't want to be passive, it felt wrong. So I got up and let my arms, legs, my whole body move around however it wanted to for the next 3/4 of an hour. When I told her what I had done, she laughed and told me she had started to work and thought, no, today I am going to lie down in semi-supine. So we had unwittingly reversed roles. Psychism and the left and right brains. There is a lot of research nowadays into the functions of the two hemispheres of our brain and how they interact. The right brain controls the left side of the body and the left brain the right. So for a good coordination, these two brains have to work together. The way they do work together is very complex. The left brain controls our normal everyday awareness. The verbal, deductive, rational side of our mental skills, while the right brain controls the more visual, musical, artistic and intuitive side of us. The left brain thinks in a logical, numerical and linear way, while the right brain sees whole patterns, systems. It perceives through feelings and sensations, where the left brain works through reasoning. It synthesizes information, where the left brain analyzes it. Developing a kinesthetic sense and an awareness of the emotions and sensations in the body involves working with the right brain. Scientific research and recent educational theory suggest that when these two hemispheres work in harmony, learning capacity and creativity is improved. What we consider normal consciousness is our left brain awareness. When a person is operating from their right brain, they are often said to be in an altered state or a trance state, which simply means something different from a left brain condition. When we talk about the subconscious, we are often talking about the activity of our right brains. Alexander was very concerned that we learn to develop conscious control of ourselves. And in this he was, albeit unwittingly, placing a great emphasis on the left brain. He deplored techniques which involves a loss of conscious control, such as hypnotism. Many healing techniques use visualization and mild trance states to induce self-hypnosis, and these methods were abhorrent to Alexander. These are all right brain activities, but the fears about the importance of developing the skills in the right brain were not developed in his lifetime. Nevertheless, his technique did involve a process of balancing the two hemispheres of the brain. One of the aims of his work was to re-educate the use of a pupil in order that the sensory awareness of that pupil would once more become reliable. He considered the sensory awareness of a person the key to that person's vitality and well-being. Our kinesthetic experiences are processed through the right brain. In effect, what Alexander taught his pupils was the development of an expanded awareness in which the two hemispheres of the brain worked in harmony with each other. The Alexander technique encouraged a constant awareness of the kinesthetic information of the body, which is a right brain skill. While at the same time operating from choice and reason, using inhibition and direction, which are attributes of the left brain. However, this expanded awareness is limited, as only some aspect of the right brain activity were acceptable to Alexander. To be a good psychic, you have to be able to use both brains together. The right brain to receive the information intuitively, and the left brain to interpret it and communicate it verbally. It is precisely in this way that the great geniuses like Einstein describe their method of thinking. In his own words, A. The words of the language as they are written or spoken do not seem to play any role in my mechanism of thought. The psychical entities which seem to serve as elements in thought are certain signs and more or less clear images which can be voluntarily reproduced and combined. B. The above-mentioned elements are, in my case, of a visual and some of a muscular type. Conventional words or other signs have to be sought for laboriously only in a secondary stage, when the mentioned associative play is sufficiently established and can be produced at will. As we understand the different ways in which our minds work, it will become much easier to accept the concept of psychism. Working with the left and right hemispheres of the brain is a way of balancing our intellect with our intuition. Most of us have experienced occasions when we get an intuition or a hunch. And if we act on it, it turns out to be right. Unfortunately, it is not always easy to do this because we live in a world dominated by scientific mode of understanding, and we do not trust our intuitions. This is a cultural bias that dominates our age and society. In early Australian Aboriginal society, intuition was treated with extreme respect. If an Aboriginal traveling away from his family got an intuition that he should return home because something was happening at home that required his presence, then home he would go. It was as serious as getting a telegram would be for us. An Aboriginal could distinguish between intuition and worrying or daydreaming in a way that most of us Westerners can't. And if his intuition was seemingly wrong, it was never considered wrong, just as when a scientific experiment fails to give the required result, there is always a good reason for it. And so the cultural bias is very different. There is a correlation between the chakras and the left and right brains. The first chakra functions by means of autonomic nervous system. This is the part of our nervous system that functions automatically without reference to the hemispheres of the brain, because it is an instinctual animal part of us that does not involve conscious awareness, although we can become aware of its operation when we reflect upon it. The second and fourth chakra relate to the activity of the right brain, while the third chakra relates to the left brain. The fifth chakra is predominantly left brain, but works with the right brain when listening to music or working psychically. The sixth chakra is also left brain when it's thinking analytically, but right brain when it is visualizing or operating psychically. The crown chakra is predominantly right brain, concerned with the whole picture. Well, as a comment here, Glen Park wrote this book way before Ian McGilchrist. So the distinctions she makes are not the present ones. But it still works. I see her point. And then she goes on to delineate what the chakras do and connect them to the different hemispheres, different substances, so-called essences like water and fire. And also their colors, which are really important. They cannot be in any given color. They do have a certain color. It's important to stick to that color and no other. I find it so interesting that there's so many connections to the worldview that Richard E. Lind illustrates when he shows that we had an original state where we function to a high level, and thinking in the body, we know it's the only rational way. The other way is what Glen Park called the left hemisphere, repetitive, iterative, automatic. It cannot go into depth. It doesn't understand depth. So when it's a question is much deeper, it can only answer on the surface level, which is pretty much what stupidity is. This is what stupidity is. It's like one professor in analytical philosophy who said that nature is the biggest threat for humankind. Therefore, we should burn nature. This is stupidity, but it's very common today. This is shameful if for some reason called intellectual. This is the intellectual. This is the intellectual as the neurological research today or the last 4 or 5 years has known. It is in the movement, and the more refine the movement, the more refine the kosha, because I would say this is a depiction of a certain kind of movement. We tend to think of these in 3 dimensions, but we know it's a rather new invention and it's very Western. But this could be movement in space, if we take a more proper sense of space, which this is. I think anything other than this would be absurd. It's a bit like saying, I can know space that is very far from myself. How would that work? How in God's name would that work? Closeness is of course of importance. It is in quantum mechanics, but apparently it's no such thing in classical physics. In classical physics, distance doesn't seem to mean anything. And look at this, doesn't it look like the Klein bottle to some extent? I think it does from the front. And this is the subject. And here is the groundedness. This is where object contained goes over to space containing and vice versa. This is the connection between the inner circle and the outer circle. I also find it interesting to look a little bit, why is it that we don't access this anymore? And I think the term anymore is wrong. It's not a temporal thing. This has been the case for quite some time now, millennia. We were equally shut out of this perspective already when Alexander the Great brought some philosophers to India. Although it was an exchange, and as we remember, the Aristotelian receptacle was leaky. Our receptacle is not leaky. Distance doesn't seem to matter. Everything is equally close or equally knowable, even if it's 1,000 kilometers. I also checked out a little bit of Ian McGilchrist. I could add that to this. Almost to the very end of the book, or, well, not so much to the end, but page 217 in the book, The Matter of Things by Ian McGilchrist. I was also in this connection thinking about the stone garden in Kyoto. Let's see if we can. The Ryoanji Temple Rock Garden is one of Kyoto's most famous gardens. There are 15 stones, and from any viewpoint you can't see more than 14. And I think we're mostly unaware, and I was myself until studying harder topology. I thought we had access to the objects, but we only have access to a certain portion of it. This is why, as I saw today in a video interview that Jan Eiskens sent me, that a blind person refused to be seeing again because he didn't want to see so little. With his hands he could feel the whole object. This is a definite problem. And this is a problem that is becoming larger and larger. We are fragmented in the world. We don't have access to the object in themselves, a unity of an object. This is what the stone garden is pointing to. And I think most Zen hippies or people like even Dan Harris, Suzuki, Philip Kapleau and many others, they think the stone garden is something to show the futility of human understanding. The normal understanding is futility in action. It is just one aspect of the object. This is making do with very little, and you don't get access, you don't get information. Ian McGilchrist, my computer just crashed here. Let's see if I can find it again. Why it matters. Perspective alters what we see. The left hemisphere is rigid, but we need to think flexibly so as not get trapped into one worldview and imagine it is everything. According to Suzuki, in Japanese we call somebody who understands things from just one side, tambankan. Someone who carries a board on his shoulder. Because you carry a big board on your shoulder, you cannot see the other side. You think you are just an ordinary human, but if you take the board off, you will understand, oh, I am Buddha too. How can I be both Buddha and an ordinary human? There is something much too small about a world in which we are isolated from the divine, in a disenchanted world, as it has been called, one that has no place for the sacred. We ourselves loom